He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state when that light turns red. So don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fith chapter. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fith chapter. That's right. Welcome to the Fith chapter. I am Brian Chapman. He is Dennis Fithian. We're ready for episode number 114. And Dennis, people in the state of Michigan got some pretty big news, some pretty important news earlier today when Big Gretch announced that about a week and a half early, she's lifting all COVID-19 restrictions. That's June 22nd, next week. No more COVID-19 restrictions.
Cut your nap short, like it says in the intro. Let's go.
That's right. So
June 22nd, the second day of summer, second longest day of the year. My anniversary.
Ooh,
my birthday. Wow. It's all happening.
Wow. All on the 22nd?
All on the 22nd. Monumental day, man. It'll be awesome.
And it's crazy because on June 22nd, you'll be spending your day with me doing the Fith chapter.
Well, I got news for you. I was thinking about calling in, but we'll see what happens. That might be the Fith chapter minus me for a day.
Okay. Well, it's also a big day because of the NBA draft lottery. And there's nothing, I would assume, nothing sexier to heat up an anniversary than watching the lottery with your special wife, right?
Well, I can tell you that I can remember in 2013 when I was on my honeymoon, the draft was going on. I was out on the beach, this restaurant, kind of restaurant bar. Nice place, you know, and the draft was happening. So they're only the way upstairs, the 3 levels, and upstairs they had this nice bar up there. And I said, I'm going to go check out. I know the Pistons were picking 7 that year. It was the KFC pick they took. You know, I was hoping they were going to pick Trey Burke, but they're on pick 3 or 4. I went up there, and the bartender was a little surprised. I'm like, hey, can you throw the NBA draft on there? He's like, really? Let's do it.
A big deal in sports today.
I checked it out. You know, I was the only one sitting. Nobody seemed to have nobody cared. Just me sitting there waiting for that pick. And then, it was KCP.
Yeah.
That was it.
How thrilling that was. Yeah. All right. Well, we've got 5 more fantastic chapters for everybody out there that should be more fantastic than watching Contavious Caldwell Pope play. So we want to thank everybody who's tuning in today, whether you're watching via Facebook Live, whether you're watching via YouTube, or you're watching via Twitch. Also want to thank those who are listening to the podcast. Of course, you can listen to each show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify at approximately 11 o'clock on the day of each show. And if you're wondering what we're going to be talking about during tonight's show, let's take a look at tonight's book. And as you can see with Dennis and me in the background, in the second chapter, Dennis and I are going to play Tankathon twice to help make Pistons draft picks. As I mentioned just a moment ago, the draft lottery is actually going to be taking place during our show on Tuesday at 8:30. So we might be on a little bit later than usual for that. But we'll play a little Tankathon to get you guys ready for that. In the third chapter, who should feel the most Dennis is really interested, trying to peek around the corner to look at that book. In the third chapter, who should feel most embarrassed by their Game 5 loss?
Ooh.
Is it going to be the 76ers? Should it be the Jazz, or should it be the Bambis? In the fourth chapter, did a sports writer rank TJ Hockenson too high on his list of top NFL tight ends, or perhaps too low? And in the fifth chapter, we'll try to get you guys some money with the major wager. But Dennis, let's start off with the first chapter, and that takes us to the Detroit Tigers. And the Tigers are playing tonight at 9:38 against the Anaheim Angels. This is a game that is not on Bally Sports Detroit. So, Dennis, you will not be able to see your boy Simo on the broadcast tonight. So I'm sure you'll be disappointed with regards to that. It's going to be broadcast on YouTube. So you can watch it. I'll be watching it on YouTube TV on YouTube, but you could also watch it on your computer or your phone on YouTube. And it's going to be a pitching. What's that?
Where's the game? It's not on Bally's. Where's it? It's a national game?
Yeah, it's a nationally televised game on YouTube, not on ESPN, not on FS1. It's on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
YouTube started. I get YouTube.
Well, then you should be able to watch the game. And I think it was last year that YouTube started broadcasting like 1 or 2 games a week.
Well, so they get a great game here, don't they?
Well, the pitching matchup is exciting. It's just heavily in favor of the Angels because the Angels have Shohei Ohtani throwing 100 miles per hour, while the Tigers have Matt Manning making his debut after earning the promotion based on his 8+ ERA against AAA competition. So there you go. But the Tigers just swept the Royals. They're not the embarrassment of Major League Baseball anymore. They're only 10 games below 500, which is not good, but considering where they were, it's a lot better. They're 20-15 in their last 35 games. So when you think about these last 35 games, you got to ask yourself, and we hope that everybody out there is asking themselves the same question, how much longer until you start thinking about the Tigers differently if you haven't already?
Yeah, I don't think about them in terms of their record. I appreciate, you putting that out there. And, it's a long season. You look at it once in a while. But where they finish in the standings and their record, that doesn't matter to me. What does matter is, these young players and looking like, the team coming together. Like Casey Mize looks legit. I mean, this is now almost 10 starts in a row where you can go out there and say, all right. I mean, this guy, he looks like an all-star. He looks like a future ace. And so, he's been awesome. It's great. It's everything that you would want over these last 9 starts from Casey Mize. And so that's great. Tarek Skubal's had a couple starts now where you'd say the same thing. Strikeouts coming around. And the one thing from Matt Manning, and, whether you think, he deserves it, there's a lot of guys, however you get up here, once you get up here, who cares? Like if he was like, had nothing but zeros, it was blowing guys away. People were like chomping at, like, he deserves to be up here. Then he came up here and got lit up. And you'd be like, it's a different. Now I agree. You'd rather have that than, having him struggling and coming up. But all of it's, it's worked the other way where, for whatever reason, you struggled at the beginning of the season. Maybe it's coming around and now you get the promotion. Hopefully he's here to stay. That's, the thing that I was getting around to. And for that, it represents hope because then you're sitting here and you're talking about Mize and Skubal and Manning pitching, day after day after day, 1, 2, 3. And then when you can see it when Boyd comes back and Turnbull, that would be a nice, if you look to opening day next year, that would be a nice rotation, in theory, when you're sitting out there. And the one thing, these guys are all similar in age and Manning, and maybe he can come up here and you see him up there with his boys and he's sitting between Mize and he's sitting there between Skubal and they're talking with him and he's learning from them. And it's one of these situations where, hopefully, these guys, stay together. Hopefully they stay together for a decade.
Yeah, hopefully they do stay together for a decade. I'm not going to just look past what he's done in AAA so far this year and assume that he's going to stay up. And I know you didn't say that you assume he's going to stay up. You said that you hope that he's going to stay up for the rest of his year or permanently. I'm not assuming that with an 8+ ERA. The reason he got promoted is because Turnbull is hurt and Boyd is hurt. And Urania is hurt as well, and they need a body. They need somebody that can throw. So they brought up somebody who was already on the 40-man roster and said, hey, we need you for a spot start. Hopefully not two, and hopefully Boyd can come back quickly. But, when I think about this last 35 games, I'm not thinking about Matt Manning sticking with the Tigers permanently. And I'm thinking with regards to thinking about this team differently, that the time is now to do that. Now, am I saying that the Tigers are going to continue to play 20 and 15 baseball over every 35 game stretch for the remainder of the year? No, I expect them to have a losing record for the rest of the year. But when they were 9 and 24, they were by far the worst team in baseball. They during that stretch, for the last 17 games of that stretch, they scored a total of 30 runs. I mean, there was no team more embarrassing in baseball, and it was a surprise that with all these no-hitters going around, the Tigers weren't no-hit 2, 3, 4 times. They weren't no-hit at all. So, look, I think that Al Avila still needs to be fired, and he needs to be fired immediately, and there's going to be fewer people out there saying he deserves to be fired when they've won most of their last 35 games, because 35 games is not a small sample size. But the fact of the matter is they're not a laughingstock anymore. And that is, I think, critical, because when we were talking about them a month ago, they were the laughingstock of baseball. You look at what's happening in baseball right now. I mean, the Diamondbacks, they've lost now after losing today 24 consecutive road games. That's the same good old Lions stat. The Lions lost 24 road games at one point. The Diamondbacks also have the second worst run differential at minus 97. The Pirates are minus 100. The Tigers earlier this year were they had the worst run differential by far. Now they're at minus 62, which is not good, but that's not even close to being the laughingstock of baseball. That's fifth worst. The Pirates have lost 10 in a row. The Orioles have lost 8 in a row. Yep. The Diamondbacks have lost 14 in a row. So I think that this, is we got to wait to see how the season plays out. But as of right now, if you look at the last 35 games, they're better than average, which I don't think is going to continue. But for the season, they're not a laughingstock. They're a run-of-the-mill bad team. And that's progress when you think about that compared to the last several years of the Al Avila era. So I think that right now you can start thinking about them differently, just not thinking about them as like a world beater or a title contender or anything else, because they're still 10 games below 500.
Yeah, most of there's a lot of bad teams. And, you mentioned most of them. They're
horrendous.
Texas might be a little bit of surprise. Minnesota's a surprise.
Yes.
Minnesota's a surprise. But the rest of them, from Miami to Colorado, especially when you trade Arenado, you're probably not surprised. You're certainly not surprised about the O's. Losing 24 games in a row, it's not anything that anybody – that's going to just, tick everybody off if you're an Arizona fan. Also, I heard the splits. You always know that Colorado, because of the thin air, has a lot better batting numbers at home. But their road splits, like they were hitting as a team, like 204 on the road. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, those are bad numbers. And when you think about the way the Tigers were hitting earlier this year, they would have loved to be hitting around 200 home or road or anywhere. And I think as of like 2 weeks ago, they had not scored in double figures in a single game this year. And I think in that span, the last 2 weeks, they've gotten to double digits twice. So the offense, which was one of the worst, like Dan Dickerson time and time again was saying, I can't remember a 10-game stretch, 15-game stretch, 17-game stretch where the offense has been this bad. Now it's looking respectable and sometimes even good.
Yeah, well, so if we can bring Brian Jelinek, is he here? He must be. He's posting. There's
a little Brian.
I am here, gentlemen. How we doing?
JFK smoking a cigar.
Thought I was vaping. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Hey, that's what people your age do nowadays. They love to vape.
Yeah.
I'm a millennial, man. What are you saying?
That's why Dennis suggested that maybe you were vaping.
And the one thing about vaping is, like, when I see people vape, it blows out the strongest. Like, it's not just like a little bit of smoke, and that's
huge.
That looks like he's vaping there.
Yeah. It's JFK. He can do no wrong. I love that man.
Okay. What about the Tigers here?
All right. So my question is, I can't remember the exact episode I said it, but do you guys think the Tigers can be a 70-win team? I think they can get there. I'm still gonna plant my flag on that hill. I think the Tigers are gonna win 70 games this year at least. Do you guys think they can get there?
Okay, no. That's the quick answer. And right now they are 10 games below 500. Obviously, 5 games above 500 in the past 35 games. In order to get to 70 wins, they'd have to go 70 and 92, which means they'd have to be 7 games below 500 or better for the remainder of the season. I don't see that happening because I think they're. I mean, when you look at AAA, the ability to bring up reinforcements, they're thin there. We talked on Tuesday, or at least I talked on Tuesday, about the potential of them bringing up Spencer Torkelson if he continues to mash, which is a huge if. But they have nothing that they can bring up from AAA as Torkelson's in AA. And I just don't think that this span of 35 games is going to last at this rate. And I think that it's hard to see this team. What do you got? Like 2.5 months left. So that's an average of 2 games below 500 per month. If they are only 2 games below 500 per month, that would be a huge shock the rest of the year. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I would agree with Brian. And I think another big reason is that you start thinking about Mize and Skubal, they're going to be on innings limits or pitch count limits. So you're not going to see them much longer. I mean, you might see them getting skipped in the rotation a few times. Like they play that game. You know, they're not going to. I don't know what I haven't broke down the innings yet, but they're not going to be pitching into.
I mean, Mize is going pretty deep. He's going. I think it was 6 2/3 in his last start. So
yeah, he is. But they're gonna adjust that. You're not going to see that. Certainly once they they get in to late July, certainly August and September. I mean, they're just not going to start him every time and have him. He's not going to pitch like every other. They're going to have him on an innings limit. Certainly Skubal as well.
I'm happy with Skubal in his last 7 starts, so I just kind of broke down some of the stats. 4-2, 3.46 ERA, and 39 innings pitched and 55 punch outs. I'm really happy with that. After starting off,
I don't know if it's the right, and I don't know.
7?
I don't know, John, if it's the right move, but that's what teams do. They start, they'll baby their guys. They'll take those innings down. They'll start skipping them left and right. And when you look, like before they had no other choice but to bring up. It's not like Matt Manning's like, woo, like it's exciting and everything, but they didn't even have anybody else in the 40-man roster. I saw people talking about going down to the Mexican League and getting Bartolo Colon and stuff like that. I mean, that's what people were talking about.
Two things. One, I would love Bartolo Colon on the Tigers. Just for a PR standpoint, it'd be awesome. Just to see that man pitch again.
I agree with that.
2, speaking of number 40, I was wrong about Wilson Ramos. Forgot to mention that on Tuesday or whatever. That was a big swing and a miss on my part. Got DFA'd and all that.
And Ramos's part.
Yeah, big time.
Yes, definitely on Ramos's part.
One more little thing. You're talking about Colorado. I was looking up some of the pitching stats for them. Austin Gomber, have you guys followed him at all?
No.
Yes, I've been following him because of my model, my defunct model.
The model that works.
Yeah.
At home, he has a .95 ERA. He's 3-1. I think that's pretty incredible for pitching at Coors Field. Yeah. Granted, it's only 28 innings pitched, but I think that's pretty solid.
What about Trevor Story's splits? Everybody was talking about signing him as a free agent in the offseason.
I would take Trevor Story, man. If you guys can, I can figure it out.
I think the Tigers can find a way to stick him in the middle of their infield somewhere, somehow.
Would you play him as a second baseman or a shortstop?
No, shortstop. He's a shortstop. You can let him pick whatever position he wants. He's Trevor Story, and he's got his competition would be Detroit Tigers infielders. So yes, he can play shortstop. But if Trevor Story is here, he's in the lineup, middle of the lineup. He's playing shortstop. He's the best player on the team.
This isn't great. At home, Trevor Story's hitting .301, and on the road, he's hitting below the Mendoza lineup, .181. That's bad. That's pretty bad. So that's not great, but
Chapman's ready to give him a $100 million deal.
Somebody's going to give it to him. But I think I'm not ready to give anybody that money because if Alavila gives it to you, then that means that you're cursed and you're not going to earn that paycheck. You're going to be a bust. And the Tigers are not in a position to sign anybody for $100 million right now.
The Tigers aren't in a position to fire Vila now, though, with the draft coming up in a couple of weeks.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
You can't fire a GM 2 weeks out from the draft.
Oh, yes, you can. There's never a bad day, little Brian, as I look down on you. There's never a bad day to fire Al Avila. You just find a day that ends in a Y.
The faster you fire Al Avila, the faster you can turn this around. I don't care if they have to have the singing hot dog vendor in there making picks. Everybody knows who the top 4 picks are going to be in some way, form, or fashion. And when it comes to after the first round, little Brian, anybody can make picks as bad as Al Avila's making it, because outside of maybe Dylan Dingler and Terry Skubal, all the Tigers picks after the first round suck under Al Avila. You're going to just let Al Avila ruin another draft and then bring in somebody afterwards? That's better than letting him stay on for another 4 or 5 years, but get rid of him ASAP. You understand?
I just think that's absurd to have no GM going into the draft, though. I mean,
hot dog vendor.
I get it. A toaster strudel could make a better pick than Al Avila. I get that, but like,
and you are advocating.
I'm not advocating for it.
Yes, you did, because you said a toaster strudel is better, but you would rather have Al Avila than a toaster strudel.
Well, look, they're not going to fire Al Avila. Maybe in the offseason we can hope for that, but they're certainly not going to do it during the season or before the draft. So
that's what I was trying to say.
I mean, we can yell and scream about it.
An Al Avila slappy.
Oh God, no! I would rather light my foot on fire than be an Al Avila slappy.
I'll be a little bit about the Tigers minor league system slappy. I was watching Chad Littleton. He's the player development guy. He was on yesterday on Bally Sports with Shep. And Dan Petrie was there at that point, and he was talking about, Willie Castro, but also shortstop, what's his name, Ryan Kreidler in their system, taking keep an eye on him. So they're maybe somebody that I don't know if he's coming up or what, but it would be nice.
When it comes to a guy like Ryan Kreidler, it's a guy that nobody's ever heard of unless you pay attention to the system very intently and you got nothing else to do. And every assistant GM or scouting director on all 30 teams has a guy like that they can point to, like, hey, you ever heard of this guy? No, I'm going to talk about him for a minute and look out for him. But that doesn't mean he's any good.
Is he any good?
If he's going to be any good, then you don't need a team employee to tell you that.
I think Daniel Cabrera could be somebody, like you start talking about the outfield next year where, Green and Baddoo, Riley Green at center.
Baddoo is not going to be a Tiger next year.
No, he's doing all right.
He's got the highest OPS in the team, little Brian.
Yeah, he's changed. He struck out a lot early, but he's he's come around. I like him. I mean, like, let's it's not talking about him being a fixture in right for years, but right now I would put my money on him being the right fielder next year for the Tigers. And so then Grossman's got another year, but this Cabrera, somebody else you start. And that's the whole thing about Manning. And I talked about the rotation, and at least for one night, you see it, you think about those guys and the possibility of, what it could be. You also start doing that, around the diamond there. I don't know about Kreidler, or Castro. They've got holes. They got a lot of holes in a lot of places, but, Candelario at third, I think you can look at him. I don't know about Paredes at second. So up the middle, they've got some questions there, but Torque at first, and Dingler behind the dish.
There's the stats right there on the right side of the screen. Eric Haas, I guess, has the highest OPS, although he isn't qualified, and neither is Akil Baddoo. But Baddoo's got 134 at-bats and an 827 OPS. Nobody is higher than that. Nobody outside of Eric Haas has an OPS over 800 on the team. So, yeah, I would put my money on Akil Baddoo sticking around, too. He doesn't have to be as good as he was back in April to stick around and be the starting left fielder for the Tigers next year.
No, I'll take 254 all day. I just feel like every time I watch him at bat, it's a strikeout. That's the vibe I get every single time he's striking out. Then
52 strikeouts is a lot for 132 at bats. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
But when you consider, once again, the OPS and the competition, that would suggest he'll be there next year.
All right, Jelinek, we'll see you in a little bit here. Let's see if you're out there. If you're listening to the podcast, I'd love somebody to give a review on the podcast so I can see who's listening to it. I listened to it, The other night, I
can tell you this. We're up to almost 2,000 total podcast downloads.
Well, I was listening the other night, and I fell asleep. And then so what happens is it just bounces to the next one. And I'm over here. I'm like, what? I'm listening to an awful lot of chat and arguing, and I'm listening to myself. And I woke up, and I'm like, whoa. I had listened to, 4 shows, 4 straight hours of the Fifth Chapter as I was sleeping. And it was It was. It wasn't. I wouldn't say give me a nightmare, but it was
What a great endorsement for our podcast. Dennis says it puts you to sleep and gives you nightmares.
It did put me to sleep. It did, but I was tired. I was listening
to
sleep. All right, Keith says, there you go. He worries that the Tigers going to win too many games and create a false sense of accomplishment.
I have that worry too, which is why I typically root for the Tigers to lose, because when they were 9-14, that was not enough to get them fired. That was enough for whatever his name was from the Detroit News to write a piece defending Al Avila, which we laughed at heartily. And now that you're 20-15 in the last 35, there's not as many people out there that are saying fire Avila. And you got guys like Little Brian out there saying, well, you can't fire him right now. You got to wait till there's a more appropriate time to do so. And so if he goes out there and just loses and loses and loses, and the Tigers are looking like the D-backs or looking like the Pirates or looking like the Orioles, it's a heck of a lot easier. Thank you, Chris McCoskey, according to Dennis on Facebook. Yeah, if you lose all the time like the D-backs and the Pirates and the Orioles, then it's easy for everybody to get behind firing him. But if you have a 20-15 stretch, Keith, you're right. I have that same fear.
All right,
let's turn the page to the second chapter.
All right, that gets us to a big night for the Detroit Pistons. They worked hard all year long to position themselves for Tuesday, and that is the NBA Draft 2021, where the Pistons had the second worst record, and we have a chance to get a little of the a draft simulator. We did this once before, and what happened, Chap? I don't remember. The Pistons picked second, maybe.
I thought they picked third.
You might be right about that.
Yeah, maybe I can take.
All right, well, let's roll the dice with them twice.
Yeah,
and see what happens here. You know what? There's a lot. I see a lot of Pistons fans that are bracing themselves for the worst. I don't know if you noticed that. Like, we're going to get screwed. There's no way. It's not happening. It's going to be terrible. So they're bracing themselves. The worst they could finish is sixth, right?
Yes, there's a 20% chance of them finishing with the sixth pick in the draft.
Yeah, and to me, if they get one of the first five, I feel pretty good about that. I feel a lot better if they were in the top three, and of course, anything from there, I feel a lot better. So that's how it works for me. I don't want to. I would like to have them. Would I take the third pick right now? No, I'll gamble that they could get the first or second.
All right, Dennis, without any further ado, let me scroll down a little bit. All I have to do is hit
Akil Badu. We talked about him last chapter. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Further ado. I got you.
Yeah. Oh, yes, that's right. All right, without any further ado, not Akil Badu, all I have to do is hit Sim Lottery. We know the Pistons will be in that top 6. Where will they be? Sim Lottery number 2. So,
right.
Dennis, if they get the number, I think you have to go to mock draft to get, there we go. All right, let's try this again. Sim Lottery. And what do the Pistons get? The number 2 pick. And they say the Timberwolves with the number 1 pick will take Cade Cunningham. And with the number 2 pick, they have the Pistons selecting Evan Mobley. If the Pistons get the number 2 pick, Dennis, would you be selecting Evan Mobley?
You know what? I think as it sits right now, I like the 2 Jalens. I like Green and I like Suggs. Those would be the 2 that it would be between, both of those guys. Suggs looks like Brandon Roy, and the more I watch of Green, the more I like him. I think more people, like you sent me a 20-minute video of him, and you just have to put on the tape and watch Jalen Green. And when you watch him, he's listed as a shooting guard, but he's got the size, he's got the moves, and he's got the lift, man. There's nothing not to like about him. Mobley, what are the comps for Mobley? I've seen him. He's 7 feet and he can shoot from outside. That's pretty nice, so, and he can block
Anthony
shots.
Davis.
Oh, Anthony Davis. Huh? I haven't seen necessarily that in him. And I like this. Here's the thing. He's got so much upside. Like, his brother looks like a better prospect to me when I've watched them play. He's got a better shot.
Isaiah?
Yeah, more skilled. But, Mobley is younger and is bigger. So you're just thinking that he's got the higher ceiling. So,
But you got to pick one Jalen. You can't just say, I would take a Jalen. Which one are you going to pick in this scenario? Cunningham is off the board.
I'll pick Jalen Suggs.
Okay. I would take the other Jalen. I wouldn't be mad if the Pistons took Evan Mobley. But on my big board, I have Cade Cunningham 1 and I have Jalen Green number 2. In that video that I sent you, I mean, one of the things that was so impressive was his ability to create shots as he's driving into the lane through traffic, through all those trees. I mean, when you think about some of the best drivers of the game, and people like to compare him to Kobe Bryant, those that have seen him play. And Kobe Bryant, when he would get in the lane, he would have to dipsy-do and have to avoid a shot blocker's hands and hit the layup. And Jalen Green, from the highlights I was watching, was just doing that all day and night with ease. And the Pistons don't have anybody like that. When you think about the players on this team, you got Killian Hayes, who doesn't do much anything when it comes to scoring. You got Sadiq Bey, who is mostly just a spot-up three-point shooter, but he can put up 15 a game like that. You got Isaiah Stewart, who's stretching his game out, but he's a big man, and he's more of like a more offensively-minded poor man's Ben Wallace. You got Mason Plumlee, who's just a solid center. But, I mean, when you think about, like, the guards in this team, maybe to a point you could say Hamidou Diallo, but nobody can just drive into the lane whenever they want to and hit shots, get to the free throw line. He can do that. He's also a good three-point shooter. So I think that he would give the Pistons an alpha scorer, a guy that they need, that they don't have on their team. And when people are talking about him being possibly the best offensive player in the draft, the Pistons need a guy that can in a couple of years put up 25 points a game. We saw last year Luka Doncic was putting up 25 points a game and came into his third year this year as an MVP candidate. You see Trae Young as a guard, not the same type of guard as Jalen Green, but he's putting up 37 in a playoff game and scoring at will. It would be awesome for the Pistons to have a guy like that, and I think that he can do that more so than a guy like Jalen Suggs or Evan Mobley.
Well, you make a compelling case, but, Suggs, I think, can be that kind of scorer, too. I mean, he's from the point guard position. He's not just a distributor. I mean, you see him. He's a live wire. He can shoot it. So all of those things. As you look at it, I said 5, and Kuminga, I don't know as much about him. I know he played in the same team as Green there. But if the Pistons get any of the top 4 picks, I like all 4 of those guys. So that you really can't. I'm not going to feel bad. And then 5, you're like, okay, there's enough about Kuminga that they're talking about. Yeah. But so I think I'll amend what I said earlier. If they get anything inside the top 4, I think you're going to get a guy that could be the real deal. And then you get to start making your own decision, though, the higher you go. You get 3, then you get 2. Of course, you get 1, you get the pick of the litter.
Yeah. All right, let's play Tankathon one more time, one more sim lottery, and the Pistons are picking. Oh, let's do something different because we just had them going second. Hey, if they get number 2, neither of us will complain. No. Let's try it again. Oh, whoa. Number 1, Orlando takes Cade Cunningham. Number 2, Minnesota takes Jalen Suggs. Number 3, OKC takes Evan Mobley. Number 4, the Rockets take Jalen Green. And number 5, the Pistons select Jonathan Kuminga.
Can you scroll down a little bit to see some of the other possibilities if it wasn't?
Yep. Number
Kuminga?
6, the Cavs take Scotty Barnes. Number 7, the Raptors take Jalen Johnson. Number 8, the Magic get another pick. This one from the Bulls and Keon Johnson. Number 9, Corey Kispert of Gonzaga to the Kings. And number 10, Davion Mitchell of Baylor to the Pelicans.
I like Davion Mitchell, but I'm not going to take him at I'm not going to take him at 5. I don't think the upside of Kuminga. Yeah, I don't want the Pistons to fall to 6. That will be, obviously, that's the nightmare scenario. That's one where you get on.
20% chance.
I think you kick the side of the couch.
Yeah, and that's the worst pick they can get. And I have invested no time into considering who the Pistons should get with that number 6 pick.
And click it to see if you get a number 1 or number 6 first for the Pistons. Keep going. Which one do you get? Okay.
By the way, I would take Kuminga as well. Oh, another Kuminga number 5. And there's Jalen Suggs at number 3.
Not bad.
Evan Mobley at number 3. Evan Mobley at number 2.
They do like Mobley a lot.
Mobley at 2.
They're attached a lot to Mobley. Boom!
Cunningham at number 1. So that happens before number 6. Even though there's a 14% chance the Pistons get the number 1 pick and a 20% chance they get the number 2 pick. Look, when it comes to Kuminga, going back to what we were talking about before about them getting the number 5 pick, he's a good, solid athlete. A lot of people think he's better than a good, solid athlete. He's, as you can see right there, 6'8", 210. Considering he's a small forward, there'd be a little bit of redundancy considering they just took Saddiq Bey at small forward in the previous draft. But Kuminga has a higher upside than Bey. So you're not going to pass up on talent to take somebody that's after that top 5 just because you got Saddiq Bey. You could play Saddiq Bey and Kuminga at the same time if you need to. I mean, you look at the Clippers when healthy. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are both small forwards, but they both play at the same time. So you're going to stick your best 5 players out there. So I would not let his position prevent me from taking him. I do worry about his 3-point shooting because I think he was shooting under 30% in the G League from 3-point land. That's something that can be developed. He's not even 19 years old yet. But there's a reason why he's clearly in the top 5, and there's a reason why he's not in the top 4. If you're picking 5, it should be easy. And if there's a team that surprises you and takes somebody not named Jalen or Evan or Cade in the top 4, then one of those guys is going to fall to you at number 5.
Yeah, and the thing is, when it comes down to Kuminga, he's the one I've seen the least of, followed by Green, and then Mobley. I've seen a lot of stuff. So, I mean, I watch college basketball. I watch a lot of Gonzaga. I watched a lot of Oklahoma State this year. They were on TV. I watched, mostly it was crazy. I watched a lot of I don't want to say it's crazy. I watched so much Big Ten. I thought they were the best conference. I thought they were the best teams. I went with them in the tournament, and they, a lot of those teams fell flat on their face. But also, Oklahoma State was on almost every game, so you get a good chance if you. I probably saw 8 complete games from Cunningham. He's a little different as you turn it on and you're expecting this guy to go flying through the air, dunking on everybody. In a lot of first halves, he's just kind of sauntering around, passing it around. You're like, wait, this is supposed to be the best player in the country, but then you start saying, ooh, that looked pretty good. He starts taking over in the second half, and he's at what's he listed? 6'6". He's got a 7-foot wingspan.
6'8".
6'8", but 7-foot wingspan.
Or 6'7". 6'7", 6'8".
6'7", and you can see it. You can see the steals. Like he'll be out there next. He's reaching out and snagging the ball, and you're like, how did he do that? And the jumper
for a point guard.
The jumper, even though he's not like pogo sticking off the ground, you just see it. It looks really good. And anytime he wants to get to the rim, he can. Also looking pretty good that way. And he's not this high flyer that's turning it back and punching it in, but he looks like Jason Tatum to me. It's what my biggest comparison would be from an NBA guy. I'll take that.
All right, what kind of feedback are we getting on the Tankathon Pistons conversation?
Let's take a look here.
Little Brian Jelinek says Cunningham did have an awful tourney.
I know you were betting on him. They didn't win a game. They won one and then lost in round of 32, or they win 2.
I thought they got to the Sweet 16. I think his final game wasn't that good, but I don't think he had a bad overall tournament.
Here's BP. Any of these draft picks will improve the Pistons. They're currently unwatchable. Well, last year, I disagree. There's a part about that I understand, because now that I watch the playoffs, it's such a different game than there's a few times that I tuned in to watch the Nets this year, and it was like, oh, there's Harden sitting on the bench, in street clothes. Like, okay, I wanted to watch. I never did get a chance to watch, and here it was. They only played 8-9 games together. So I mostly just watched the Pistons, and, it is just like you have to really embrace it. It was like watching, the Vegas Summer League, or, watching them scrimmage. Like you would see them out there, and, hey, Bey looks pretty good. It was nice to, see the guys out there, but it's nowhere close to. It's not even similar to anything that you see in the postseason. And speaking of the postseason, let's get to it, chap.
Yeah, let's turn the page to the third chapter. And that takes us to, like you said, the NBA playoffs. And Well, we had not one, not two, but 3 game 5s conclude since our last show on Tuesday. And all 3 game 5s, you could say, were in some way, shape, or form shocking. You look at on Tuesday night, despite James Harden playing at about 5% and Kyrie Irving not playing at all, the Brooklyn Nets beat the Milwaukee Bambis. Yes, I'm back to calling them the Bambis again. And they now trail, the Bambis trail 3-2 heading into game 6 tonight. Yesterday, despite holding a 24-point lead, the Philadelphia 76ers choked the game away behind bricked shots, bricked free throws, a great third quarter by Lemon Pepper Lou, and a great game by Trae Young. And the 76ers now trail the Atlanta Hawks 3-2 heading into game 6 tomorrow. And then also not playing. What's that?
Oh, you froze up for a second, but you came right back.
Yeah, despite Kawhi Leonard not suiting up for the Clippers and the Jazz playing at home, the Jazz lost to playoff P, and the Clippers are now up 3-2 on the Jazz heading into game 6 tomorrow. So all 3 losers suffered some form of truly embarrassing loss in their game 5s. Dennis, which team should feel the most embarrassed after losing game 5?
Well, Doc Rivers' team, you got to give it to them. Like, if they were in a great position, I'm thinking about, yeah, man, this team can go to the finals with everything that's going on. Man, this team could win the finals. And then the fourth quarter happens, and you're like, you know what? Ben Simmons is supposed to be he's not a superstar. Ben Simmons, he's an all-star. But, Ben Simmons, the game before, they had to pull him off the floor because they were going to shoot a 3. And you're like, hey, this guy's one of our top 2 players. You can't even have him out on the floor. And then the fourth quarter was like that was an embarrassment. Like they're playing hack, bang the Ben, hack a Shaq, putting him on the line. He's missing left and right, and and then the Hawks are banking him in, and you get down to the end. As much as Joel Embiid was fantastic, he's got a share in that as well. Like he makes so many awesome shots, and you're thinking like, he's off one leg, wide of the lane. You're like, ooh, but then he makes it. You're like, wow. This guy's sweet, but when it comes down, I don't know if you can be going off one leg and shooting off balance with one arm and everything. I know it's the new NBA and everything, but in crunch time, man, you have to have a little better bread and butter shot to go to, and I don't really know what it is for Embiid. And then he's opposite of Ben Simmons. You want him on the free throw line. What's he 80+% from the stripe? He missed both of them. That's crazy, man. That was a complete choke job by the Sixers. They got to be kicking themselves left and right here, the Bucks.
The who?
The Bambis, the Bucks.
Oh, okay.
Giannis was all defensive player of the year, defensive player of the year last year, the year before. He might even be a multiple-time defensive player of the year. How about when Durant's cooking? Why don't you put the Greek freak on him?
Here's a stat for you. I saw this on Jalen and Jacoby earlier today. They had a stat showing how many possessions each Milwaukee Bucks player has defended Kevin Durant throughout the course of the series. And the stat showed that Antetokounmpo had defended Durant 4 times this series. And that was Thanasis Antetokounmpo. Giannis had not defended him at all. So a bench warmer, his older brother, had defended him 4 times this series, and Giannis 0. Like, it's amazing because you would think that on a switch or off of an offensive rebound or something, you would accidentally defend Durant, but never.
Well, and, I give it up to Jeff Green, who made those 7 threes. I don't know if any team's going to lose if you got somebody, cooking like that out there. But, the way that Durant was going, it was incredible. Giannis can't guard him?
Yeah, that's what I thought. Although I did see earlier today, there's a quote, I think I saw it on the bottom line of ESPN, that Giannis said that he is open to playing defense against Durant tonight. Like we're 5 games into this series. That should already happen by now. You're going to think about doing that in game 6 and now maybe the best defensive player of the team should guard the best offensive player of the other team.
You're in an elimination game and you're open to playing some defense, all right?
Yeah, exactly. When I when I was thinking about this, it was obviously very challenging because all three of those Game 5 losers suffered, I thought, truly embarrassing losses. And you look at the Jazz and the Clippers series, the best player on the Jazz or the best player on the Clippers was out. So you would think that with the best player on the Clippers being out and the Jazz being at home, it would be an easy W for them. And instead, they were lighting it up from behind the arc in the first half of that game, but only up by a couple of points. And then I think they were like 3 of 20 or 3 of 24 from downtown in the second half. They couldn't buy a 3-point shot when they were one of the best 3-point shooting teams in NBA history. That's embarrassing to lose a game like that if you are the Clippers. But the two Eastern Conference losers I thought were pretty much neck and neck. And when you look at the Nets and the Milwaukee Bambis, like I on Tuesday, I told you guys that for the time being, because it was tied at 2, I was not going to refer to them as the Milwaukee Bambis, but I didn't have much of a choice but to do so after they lost that game. And here I got some highlights for you of the Milwaukee Bambis game.
There's Middleton.
Oh. Yeah, and he just fell through the snow. Perfect play-by-play by you, Dennis. But the Bambis, they had just won consecutive games. One of Brooklyn's big three was out in Kyrie Irving. Another one of their big three was just coming back after missing a whole bunch of time in James Harden, and he really was a non-factor. All they had to do was keep Kevin Durant in check. They didn't have to dominate him or lock him down. Just keep him in check. Keep him to under 40 points, and you win that game.
PJ Tucker buried again.
Exactly. Instead, you give up 49 points to Kevin Durant, and you look soft like this little sucker Bambi over there. Aww. And like I mentioned, they refused to put Giannis on Durant, and they lost that game. So that was really close. But despite how bad the Bambi's looking, we're going to continue to show you Bambi's highlights there on the side of the screen. I have to go with the 76ers as being the team that had the most embarrassing Game 5 loss, just because a guy like Durant, he can take over a game like that.
There's
one of the
Giannis.
best scorers. Yeah, that's right, just spinning around like that. Oh, sorry, Giannis.
That's all he can do.
But a guy like Durant, one of the best scorers in the history of the game, he can go off for 49, 50 points because that's what guys like that do. But there were a lot of reasons, like you mentioned, for that collapse. Ben Simmons, 4 of 14 from the free throw line. Like, if you're Andre Drummond or Ben Wallace or Shaq, you're laughing at the way Ben Simmons was shooting free throws, because Drummond and Big Ben were usually better than going 4 of 14 from the free throw line. And he was also 2 of 4 from the field. Now, part of that was because whenever he got the ball, the Hawks were going up there and hacking him. But if you're supposed to be a great offensive player, you've got to be able to put up more than just 4 shots in a 2-2 game in Game 5. It was absolutely ridiculous. And then to keep on bricking those free throws, the way they got back in that game, the Hawks, was Lemon Pepper Lou in the third quarter and Gallinari to make the score respectable. And then Nate McMillan said, hey, now that the score is respectable, now that we're not down by 24 or 20 points, we're down by 15, let's start playing Beat Up Ben. And when they played Beat Up Ben, he was an absolute joke. So, and you also nailed it with Joel Embiid. And I think that one of the issues with Embiid is that he's just been getting tired in the second half, because in the first half of not just yesterday's game, but in a lot of games, he's been playing extremely well. But in the second half, like in the first half, I remember texting one of my friends who's a 76ers fan saying, this is a joke. This is not even fair, because Capella and John Collins are just not good enough, and they're not big enough to defend Joel Embiid. And despite that, despite those same players looking like preschoolers in the first half, as you can see Giannis's ass sticking up in the air, those guys looked like they were Sheed and Big Ben in the second half trying to lock him down.
Yeah, I guess I don't know how to. I tried to embed a tweet there, so I will see if you can read this from Reggie Miller. I'll just have to read it. It's not coming out there. Reggie Miller says, I'm just going to throw this out there to see what the responses will be. If you're Steve Nash and the Nets, would you sit James Harden and Kevin Durant in Game 6 because of the heavy minutes tonight and push all your chips to the center of the table for Game 7?
No. You take Bambi out. In the movie, Bambi's mom was taken out, so you take out Bambi like in the Disney movie, Bambi's mom was taken out. Now, James Harden, sit him because he was ineffective, and you need him for the Eastern Conference Finals against either the Hawks or the 76ers, most likely the Hawks. But you keep Durant in there because you don't want Bambi to eventually grow up and show that Bambi's a big buck. Which is what everybody in Milwaukee wants them to be. They want them to be the Bucks. You take the Bambis out while you've got the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, I was looking for a good meme because he was getting really dragged for his opinion there. Just go ahead and give up Game 6 and come back for Game 7.
No.
Yeah, that's not a good strategy. Yeah, you can't do that. Go out there.
What other kind of feedback are we getting?
Well, let's have a look here where it starts with CP3, and you got a syringe there. Of course, the vaccination issue there. Jalen Rose did say that he thought that CP3. Did he say that he had one shot, or? But
I think he said he was fully vaccinated. So
yeah, so it's unclear though. It's unclear. But Jalen said he was, and it's a bigger story if he is vaccinated and caught COVID, because mostly you hear from a lot of people like, who cares? Take care of yourself. You're not catching anything if you get the vaccination. And we know it's not 100%, but that would be a huge deal.
Well, look at the Yankees. A bunch of Yankees players earlier this year who were vaccinated had some of those breakthrough cases. So it's possible. But the good thing about getting the vaccine, if you're one of those vaccine doubters out there that say, oh, CP3 is sick and he's on a ventilator. Number one, he's not. But number two, if you do contract the coronavirus after having gotten vaccinated, then your symptoms are are not nearly as bad as they would have been, and you start testing negative in a lot less than 2 weeks. So there's a chance that CP3 could be back before Game 1 of the Western Conference Finals, and certainly before Game 2.
Yeah, it's playing out in the NFL. It's going to be a big story. I saw Joe Milton, and what's the
Joe Milton, the former Michigan quarterback?
No, Joe. What's the running back for the Bengals name? Why am I calling him Joe Milton?
Oh, the guy that punches women?
Yeah, Mixon. Sorry, yeah. Mixon. And also the little white wide receiver for the Bills, Bailey. Is that his name? Bailey, something like that.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
The long blonde locks and everything.
Yeah.
He was ticked off about both of them. Ticked off about the NFL Players Association. They put the rules out like, you get vaccinated, you can head out of the hotel, you can party, you can do all these things, and you're good to go. Hey, come on in. You don't got the vaccination. Oh, hold up. You got to stay home. No mingling. No doing anything.
No bringing girls back to your room. No, none of that stuff.
Yeah, these guys are upset about that. They're like, what's up with this? So
get your freaking shot.
Well, they don't want to.
Then don't have fun.
Yeah, hey, what can I say? There you go. That is playing out there. There's Ben Simmons once, BP talking about the 76ers. They worked so hard to get that tank. They really did. I mean, they did this, and all the anti-tankers are like, yeah, great job, Sixers. But
well, I mean, they tanked to get the players. And when the players were in the clutch yesterday with a 24-point lead, they blew it. So the problem was not the tank. It was what those players did when they were given the opportunity. And by the way, let's not forget Tobias Harris. When you look at the three best players on that team, Tobias Harris 0 for 3 in the fourth quarter. What the heck was he doing? He didn't hit any clutch shots either.
No. Well, what do you have? 4 points on the game. I mean, that was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody. Seth Curry was nice.
Yes.
They all. You know what? It was a whole drag once. Ben Simmons. They started following him. It felt like, oh my God, it felt like they were in the game even when they weren't. When he was up there bricking them, it just gave him life.
Yeah.
No
And that
question.
was after the lemon pepper / Gallinari surge made it a respectable deficit to overcome.
Yeah, Lou Williams was awesome. And you're right, Gallinari hit that biggest shot over there. I don't know what Jelinik's talking about with G's.
Yeah,
Maybe we can
knows?
ask him. No? Let's move on. All right.
We don't even ask him about a weak comment like that. All right, let's turn the page to the 4th chapter.
That gets us to the NFL. Some, I hope Raj is watching because his favorite thing is rankings and over and unders. Well, CBS Sports put out a ranking for top tight ends in the NFL in 2021. And surprising or not surprising, TJ Hockenson ranked in the top 5.
And there's Gesicki at number 10.
Ooh.
You got Hunter Henry at number 9. Noah Fant, his Iowa teammate, at number 8. Number 7, Dallas Goedert. Number 6, Mark Andrews of the Ravens. And there's TJ Hockenson, number 5 of the same old Lions. Who's ahead of him? Number 4 might surprise a lot of you. Kyle Pitts hasn't played an NFL game. Yes, Kyle Pitts of the Falcons. Number 3 is Darren Waller, Raiders. Number 2, George Kittle. And do we have to scroll down to number 1? Obviously, Travis Kelce. But TJ Hockenson of the same old Lions, number 5.
Yeah, well, to me, I look at this as somebody that keeps a pretty close eye on tight ends, being a fantasy football manager like I am, is that after Kelce and Kittle and Waller, you could really take a 4 through, Pitts. Pitts is more like a wide receiver, runs like a wide receiver, but is, a freak like Kelvin Johnson. So, I get that, with the situation that he's going to be in Atlanta too. But I really think you could take from 4 to 10 and you can just throw those guys up in the air, start talking about, who's going to be where. Now, if we're just looking for stats, Hockenson, when you think about Jared Goff and what the Lions have at wide receiver, just pass catchers, they're going to be running the ball way more than they throw the ball. And when they fall behind, Jared Goff's not good at pushing the ball down the field. What he is good at is accurate short passes. Well, Hockenson, just going out. It's going to be in his 3rd year. I think he's going to be a target monster. And I think you're going to see 10, 11, 12 targets a game for Hockenson. And you're going to get down the red zone. I mean, who are you throwing to? You're throwing to Hockenson. So he's going to get a lot of targets. And I think.
What about Quintez Cephas?
Yeah, I don't see it. I think Hawkinson's all they have there, and I think that's the reason. Like fantasy football wise, I think he'd be pretty good. Now, I don't think ultimately that's going to be great for the Lions and their offense. They're going to rank as one of the bottom offenses, I think, this year in the NFL. But I think Hockenson will be their only pass catching relevant player. If you're talking about 12 teams.
Yeah, I think you're right when you talk about those top tight ends in the league. I mean, I was I think surprised like a lot of people were to find out that TJ Hockenson was named a Pro Bowler last year, because I was watching him throughout his 16 games. I said, all right, he had a big step up in 2020, and he's looking like a solid player. Maybe in a couple of years he'll get to the Pro Bowl, but boom, no, second year he's already a Pro Bowler. And I was equally surprised that he was labeled a top 5 tight end in the NFL by this CBSSports.com writer. And it's because when you think of a Pro Bowler, you think of a star or a superstar player in whatever that position is, quarterback, defensive end, defensive back, whatever it is. And when you watch TJ Hockenson play, there's nothing about him that leads you to say, yeah, he's a star, he's a superstar. He just leaps off the field at you, and you say, wow, this guy is one of the best in the league at his position. But yeah, when I was looking at the different names in that top 10, I think it's clear that certainly the top 2 guys that are ahead of him should be better than him. If you believe all the hype about Kyle Pitts being this legendary player, then perhaps he deserves to be above him as well. And I would put guys like Hunter Henry, Mark Andrews, and Dallas Goedert ahead of him as well. But yeah, when you talk about looking at the 4 through 10, maybe 4 through 12 tight ends in the league, it could go in any direction. So you could have TJ Hockenson up there at 4 or 5, and I can't be mad. And you could also have him at 10 or 11, and I can't be mad. It's clear that he's an above average tight end, but it just seems like it's really close once you get past those top 2 or 3 tight ends in the league.
And yet I think he's going to get the good numbers because they just don't have anybody else to get the ball to.
Yeah, I think that's very important as well. I mean, somebody's going to have to catch the ball at some point. And think about last year. He was able to put up Pro Bowl numbers, and he did that with Galladay playing, about a quarter of the season. And then, Marvin Jones is a good but not a great receiver, and Amendola was an average receiver. And now you could argue that none of the receivers they have this year are going to be as good as Marvin Jones in terms of wide receivers. So if somebody's going to catch the football and Jared Goff is looking for somebody to hit up for a pass, it's probably going to be it's probably going to be TJ Hockenson.
And it fits his skill set, Goff, and where it's at right now. If you looked at, where he was an elite thrower, it was in the 5 to 10 yard range. You say, well, that's not great for a quarterback. And that's a lot of the reason that people are down on Goff, because he wasn't making throws down the field and not making accurate throws down the field. And, he was negative in a lot of that, but, his best throws are within 10 yards. He's really good there. So, that's right where Hawk's going to be looming, and that's where he's going to be available. And, that's going to be his security blanket. And he'll lead the Lions in catches and receiving touchdowns. And he'll be a nice little pick if you're in fantasy football and, you're down a little bit. And the first 4 tight ends are off the board. Would I suggest taking Hockenson? You don't like taking players from bad teams. So that's a hard thing. So you're not going to be jumping on him earlier, but later on in the draft, it's like, all right, he's all they got. Let's do it.
Yeah, little Brian put a comment on YouTube, and why don't we bring little Brian back in? His comment was, Hawk has to be ranked at 5 because Goff will have nobody else to throw to. If Hawk isn't a top 10 tight end at the end of the year, it's ridiculous. From a stats perspective, Hawk better be unreal.
Yeah, I mean, like Fithian just said, Goff has nobody to throw to. Hockenson is the only person he's going to have to be able to target. And again, like what Fithian said, within 10, 15 yards, Goff is unreal. And that's right where TJ Hockenson's going to be. So I can see TJ Hockenson being the 3rd, 4th, or 5th tight end taken in fantasy football drafts, without a doubt.
Let me read you guys something from Lions general manager Brad Holmes, who Tim 20man from DetroitLions.com was tweeting out about today. He says,
well, it's a positive tweet because 20man tweeted it.
Holmes doesn't view Jared Goff as a bridge or stopgap quarterback in Detroit. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think that is certainly possible. Like I've been saying ever since the same old Lions acquired Jared Goff, I know that a lot of people have said he's guaranteed to be stopgap. The Lions have to draft a quarterback in the top 10 this year because Jared Goff just sucks. But you don't, even though Goff didn't have a good year last year, you don't acquire a guy who's about to start the first year of a 4-year, $134 million contract and assume that he's not going to work out. You're acquiring a guy like that because you're assuming that he is going to work out. Mm-hmm. This is also the second time in his career that Brad Holmes has acquired him. Back when he was with the Rams, he was part of the front office staff that drafted him, and now he is the leader of a front office staff that acquired him for the second time in his career. So I think it makes sense not only for him to say that, but for him to believe it. And if Jared Goff proves him wrong on the field by playing like Dennis thinks he's going to play, then they can move on and draft somebody else. But yeah, it just wouldn't make sense to acquire a $134 million quarterback and say he's our $134 million bridge quarterback.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be here for at least 3 to 4 years of his deal.
Well, look, it
depends on how he plays.
You've got 2 years with him, and then after that, don't have any money committed to him. So if Brad Holmes came out, like I don't even know who's the Lions' backup right now. That dude they got from Green Bay.
Yeah,
Jack Doyle or something like that, or Tim Doyle. whatever.
somebody like that. Yeah.
Frank Pringle's their backup quarterback, and you're going to be out there like, yeah, Goff's just a bridge quarterback. What?
And Shea Patterson already signed with the CFL team, so they can't go out and get him.
Yeah, even if you believe that, Brad Holmes is not going to come out and say that. You've got your guy, and even though you didn't surround him with fantastic wide receiver talent or anything, he does have an offensive line and a running game, and you hope he can go out there. And the one thing, it is a gamble, but you got the 2 years. You mentioned his familiarity with him. And the other thing is you sit here, you get he is a former number 1 pick. He did go to a Super Bowl. He did direct a number 1 and number 2 overall offense for 2 years. He had a lot of talent around him. And, the idea is to get some talent around him moving forward. The whole thing changes scenery. It's like, it's a good gamble to make, but you're certainly not going to come out before he's played a game with you and be like, yeah, he kind of sucks. Or, you say everything,
all the momentum in the offseason and all the comments have been about, oh, Jared Goff loves being here, and it's a new lease on life for Jared Goff. So that's the PR. Those are the PR comments that they're putting out there, and I think they believe them. And yeah, you're right, Dennis. They're not going to undercut them by saying, oh man, we like Goff, but have you seen Sam Howell? I mean, the dude can really spin it. And hey, if we can get Sean Clifford in the 3rd round, we like him better than. I mean, no, they're going to say these things, and I think they actually believe them.
Don't even mention Sean Clifford.
I didn't say first round pick. I said 3rd round pick.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even think it's going to be a 3rd round pick at this rate.
Yeah, it changes as it goes. If you go out there and who's it, Rattler from Oklahoma comes out, looks like he's the next great QB, and it's going to be the number 1 pick. And the Lions are a 2-15 team, and and Goff is underwhelming. You think Brad Holmes next year is going to be like, no man, we're all about Goff. You kidding me?
Yeah.
There's something about Spencer Rattler I just hate. I don't know what it is exactly. I feel like he's kind of overrated, but obviously he's still really good. I don't know how to describe it properly. Just something about that dude I just don't like.
Well, he hasn't been great so far.
Yeah.
But you just see some flashes, I think. Maybe it's his hair. He's got some funny hair sometimes. For me, comment on somebody's hair, but I'd take it.
Yeah, I think he's appropriately rated. He's a good player, not a great player. He's got a chance to really step up and improve his draft stock and get Oklahoma back to a CFP this year. But I mean,
there's a chance he could be the number 1 pick. There's a chance he could be. He's got that kind of talent.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else before we get to the major wager?
I can give you my picks for you guys heading into yours. I picked Jordan Spieth at plus 450 to finish with 4 birdies on the day. Exactly 4. I have to check in and see what they are
today.
But for today, yes.
Okay.
And then
that's specific.
It's in Torrey Pines. Yeah, it's a late start, but yeah, it is very specific. And then
what were the odds on that?
Plus 450.
Plus 450. Okay.
And then keeping it with the U.S. Open, I have Bubba Watson. He has to have exactly a par on hole 18 at plus 135. So those are my picks for yesterday and Bubba Watson's pick for today.
All right. Plus 135 to get a par. So the odds are him not getting one. Is that because the odds are so good to get a birdie, or because that hole is so tough?
They're actually pretty split. I mean, I was just looking up Torrey Pines South scorecard, and 18 is either the fourth or fifth hardest hole in the course. So it's definitely more difficult. It's a long par 5.
Not a lot of great scores out there. There's still some guys out there, including Rory, who's -2. The best, the leader right now, -4. So, hey, Rory has been really off in the last year or two in the first round. He's been great in the second and third round.
Yeah.
So
that's what we love about the U.S. Open, though. High scores, the occasional low number. It's the hardest tournament in golf.
People are going to be jumping all over Rory after today. Mark my words.
All right. Thanks for your pick, little Brian, on the major wager. All right, Dennis. Remind us of what you picked on Tuesday for the major wager and what you're thinking about for tonight.
Yeah, I don't really want to remind you because it was a terrible pick. I went with Durant under 35.5, and he had that, I think, by the end of the third quarter. He was awesome. He was great. And, when you bet, do you want it to come down to the last shot where you feel like you got a chance, or just if you're going to lose, just get torched and get blowout. 49.5. Once you had 49, you had that. The bet was over, before I got to the fourth quarter, so I didn't have to worry about that. Yeah, I'm going to the U.S. Open out there at Torrey Pines, and I'm going with McIlroy. Whatever he ends up with here after the first round, I'm going to jump all over Rory to win the U.S. Open.
To win it all, okay.
Well, the reasoning there is he's been terrible in first round play, and then he's been great in the second and third round. You just need to get him to that fourth round, and yet today here he is -2. He's still out there unless he blows up and ends up +6 or something. If he can stay under par, he's a nice bet, and you're going to get somebody on that first page. I'm jumping on McIlroy to win it.
All right. Well, you mentioned your pick wasn't good on Tuesday, and mine wasn't either. I didn't have faith in the Milwaukee Bambis, but I just felt like the Brooklyn Nets were too injury riddled to win any more games. So I picked not only the Bambis to win Game 5, but I had them to win this series in 6 at +125, and that was nullified when they couldn't even win Game 5. So, I'm sick of the Bambis. I did think about betting on the Bambis tonight for my major wager because it's a home game and it's -5.5, and I figured Durant can't go for 49 points again, which they might need to do. But, just like Charles Barkley was saying during the broadcast at halftime and after the game, the Bambis play stupid basketball. He said it was crazy because at halftime of that game, he said, let me tell you something. Okay, Ernie, first of all, the Bambis, they're going to win the championship, but they play the stupidest basketball out there. And it was like, wow, what a contradiction. You think they're going to win the championship by playing stupid basketball, and they played stupid, soft Bambi basketball and lost that game in the second half. But because of that, while I did bet on them, they're not going to be my major wager. I also thought about taking the Rays -1.5 against the Mariners because the Rays are a great team, and I think they're undervalued most of the time, and the Rays suck. But I'm going with tonight's Tigers game. It starts in about an hour, so you can still bet on this game if you want to right now. And the Tigers are playing the Angels in Anaheim. Shohei Ohtani is going to be throwing 100 miles per hour for the Angels. Matt Manning is going to make his major league debut for the Tigers, and all he did in AAA was have an 8.07 ERA, a 3.03 opponent's batting average, and a 155 whip with 11 home runs allowed and 32 in the third innings pitched. I think Ohtani is going to blow the Tigers away early on in this game, and I think that the Angels' offense, perhaps led by Ohtani on the mound, at the plate, is going to blow Matt Manning away. He could give up 2 or 3 home runs in the first couple innings. It's going to be ugly. So check this out, Dennis. Check this out. I'm going to go with the first half line on an alternate line. And if you're not familiar with baseball, you're thinking there's no halftime in baseball. But in terms of gambling, that means the score in the first 5 innings. I'm going with the Angels -3.5 after 5 innings at +310. So I think the Angels will be up by at least 4 after the 5th inning. If you want to be more conservative, you can just pick the Angels to be leading after the first 5 innings of the game, or just to win the game, maybe even -1.5. But I'm so aggressive with this because of that pitching matchup and because the Angels are playing better lately that I'm going with the Angels -3.5 in the first half.
You know what? I really think that sounds like a good bet. The hard part would be, as a Tiger fan, I wouldn't want to bet. I don't want to. Well, I expect Manning to get rocked, but I don't want to see him get rocked. So
that's fair.
I would like to see the Tigers offense, and I'm an Ohtani fan, so it's going to be fun to watch. But I wouldn't want, here's the guy that's going to be the future of the team. Let me bet against him because I think he's going to get rocked in his first outing. But I get where you're coming from, so I see it. I see where you're at, and you're betting. You're trying to make money. You're not out here. You're not out here just picking as a homer. All right, well, you hear that music. That means Chapman's going to do his little rap here at the end. And thanks to Brian Jelinek. We will talk with you on Tuesday. It'll be NBA Draft Lottery Night. For Brian Chapman, I'm Dennis Fithy, and good night. Do a freestyle. Let's see it.
Represents the mitten by way of Penn State,
which I get to talk sport, but the people can't wait. He represents the mitten, be a true EMU could cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They get respect around the state when that light turn red. So don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut the nap show and tip your cap for and sit back for the chapter. Brian Chapman. Dennis where they open their mouth, they spitting the facts. This ain't even optional.
Late on that.
Tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast, but download it to your phone. The podcast. They mix laughter. They get after. It's all captured in the chapter.
Week. This week, 36.5 for Durant. I'm staying off that one.